Hotep family. So earlier today I read to you some of Lenin, and it reminded me that once upon a time I was very interested in writing pamphlets to share with our people and for us to move forward as a people and move forward as a race. And in the 10 years that passed, not much has really made a difference in that sense. Certainly I wrote maybe 400 articles after that. Certainly I've written books, and of course, I have this YouTube channel and all of that. But the question becomes, do we have the same grievances? And if so, then what is the next 10 years supposed to look like? How can we be more active? How can we transform our community? And how can you help? All right? So the question becomes, what are our grievances of 2021? So we're going to look back and see our grievances from 2011. Now, of course, this is just something I wrote a long time ago when I was still, what do you call it, wet behind the ears. But we'll see what it is. I haven't reread it recently, but we're going to look into it. So this is just called Grievances. As you can see, it's from April 10th, 2011. I used to actually put hashtags, Black Fashion, Regardless, whatever. I think that was automatic. Well, let's see. In the service of our ancestors in African love, listen, seeker, I come in peace. Right? The key to all problems is the problem of consciousness. So even back then, my most important thing was to remember the wisdom of our ancestors and share that with us. Although this could have been added afterwards, to be honest. But it's a worthwhile read, Originally, I approached our siblings on the streets concerning the following write-up of our grievances. The development from here is the specifications of the struggle. You are enlisted to build African blood siblings community centers, which of course are vocal, right? So seek to be a part of a brotherhood, sisterhood, or group, for we accomplish more together than alone. That's the 9th blameless code, which is really important, and that's from Brother G, right? So African Blood Siblings is the organization to liberate African people at home. So this was the pamphlet, right? It was just like a one-page pamphlet. I don't remember what I was doing with it. Maybe I was supposed to mass produce it. I don't know, but this was 10 years ago, so who knows, right? African Blood Siblings is the organization to liberate African people at home and abroad, uniquely embracing the concept of morality. So today I would say ABS requires mass support to solve our grievances. So philosophers asked, what is goodness? ABS answered, and donate money or buy our literature, right? Now, of course, I didn't really receive any donations, and of course, I didn't have any literature. But when you start off something, you want to make it into something, Sometimes whatever it is that you have in front of you is not necessarily what it's going to be at the end, but you want everything to coincide and correspond, So to this day, I probably haven't collected, very significant donations, but obviously nobody's really donating. So let's say massively organize to overwhelmingly mobilize. So one of the goals is to massively organize, to overwhelmingly mobilize, right? And this is actually a little bit depressing because as you can tell, there's no massive organization. This was a young, let's say 10 years ago. So if I'm 32 now, 10 years ago I'm 22. 22 I had some dreams of massive organization, and fast forward into time, those dreams are gone. Don't even mention it, do I? So racial self-respect, right? We must respect ourselves first and foremost. So the first is an ethical code, right? Ethics dictates that the truth must be pursued. The truth is that 6 continents had African deities based around the original advanced civilization of Kush, which followed the 10 blameless codes and found most civilizations of the world. Truth is, we have the best history, right? So we have ethical codes, right? So we have to make them focus on our minds, not our behinds. That was something somebody told us, that we tend to make everybody focus on our behinds instead of our minds. But European culture deludes our youth choose to empty their front pockets to dress for abuse their back pockets. Most all of our fashion is plantation clothes, so we can work for the European house, field, prison, and brothel work. With ABS as a medium, our work for self-fashion can flourish. So this right here is actually pretty important, that once upon a time, well, at least what you'd have to know is that most of what we dress, how we dress, is based off of our position in this plantation. well, I said plantation, right? But our position, basically, whether we're on the house doing housework, like that's the suit and ties, the field work, it's the construction or the whatever, the prison work, which is, obviously prison and brothel are obviously like, street, kind of dress codes. Uh, let's see, know thyself. So since Kush until 500 years ago, Africans were the most respected people. We built the largest pre-modern structure, hosted the greatest empires, and had the best ethics and philosophies. They will not teach us this in their schools. We can get our own. So of course, the object there was like the objective was to. So these three is about self-respect, right? Racial self-respect. Respecting our race, right? Obviously, you want your own schools because their schools are inadequate. So it's important to, if we're talking about propaganda and moving forward into the next decade, we have to highlight how not only do we have something to give our people in terms of knowledge, but that they don't want to give us certain things, and that's why we need our own. It's you have to highlight the abuses that you face, as well as what you can do independently. This right here, the fashion thing, it's the same thing. It's like, we do dress a certain way, based off of them. Now, of course, white, and the focus is on our behinds instead of our minds, right? Like today, most, like a lot of ways, we tend to emphasize our behinds over our minds, a lot of what trends is behind, it's just the behind, and it's hardly the mind, I mean sometimes the mind trends, but it's hardly. And you see how I always in all of these I emphasize an ethical code, because at the time that was really my emphasis. And I think that that's really the emphasis of everything, because one of the things that I discovered at this point in time was that ethics is actually at the core of all of the ideologies. It's at the core of all of the ideologies, to the point where like for instance, at the core of, let's say we were reading socialism earlier, right? At the core of socialism is this idea that the bourgeoisie are unethical. You understand? And that the workers, the proletariat, would be the ethical ones. It's at the core of all the ideologies is this code of ethics. And so, by articulating ethics, that's really where it comes in. Now, how that can manifest for a pamphlet, or for how that can manifest for a pamphlet in the future is not really not clear, but it's something that we have to do. So getting interracial respect. So interracial respect would be respect for Wazungu, right? Disrespect destroys us. So why would I don't know why I was concerned with that, but let's see. Ethical code. No respected people make foreigners police them. Officers abuse us under the guise of justice, but what is justice? The European insists African labor, European wealth is justice. The prison industrial complex is European justice. Look at the U.S. Constitution. Most major corporations, McDonald's, Dell, Microsoft, use prison labor. Let us rebel. African labor, African wealth. We can police ourselves by the laws of morality. That will be justice. So this idea is that, at the core of Western society, and so this is something that actually hasn't changed. We're still being policed by foreigners, right? We're being policed by foreigners, well, particularly in the West, because, like I said, this was actually focused on America. So you can see, I say most major corporations, and I talk about only American corporations, and I say look at the U.S. Constitution. Even though I'm trying to make it more international, African, European, it seems like I'm only talking about America. But African labor, African wealth. Now, obviously, what I would say, in the looking into this is that, you really couldn't police yourself in America. So it's not really something to say. I mean, if you're, and that's the thing though, it's like if you're promoting revolution, then you would say, yeah, we can police ourselves wherever we are. But and that's fine. But again, it's about what's practical and what you want to put your resources towards. Causing yourself to police, like trying to police yourself in a foreign nation, as opposed to in indigenous nation, is just a lot more effort than what it's worth. So I would revisit this, although it's still the case. But it's like this was somebody should have probably explained to me. This is why I have the Book of Powers. That you'd explain to somebody like this who is really into revolution, into working for the cause, really into rebelling, if you will, right? That you might be fighting in the wrong area. So that would be a wrong area. So from the invisible European hand to visible African hands. In the U.S., 98% of Africans work for Europeans, just like slavery, only now we commute to the plantation. We own little and can be evicted, starved, or beaten any day. Let us boycott to depreciate, then buy our neighborhoods, network with the continent, and finally have security. Alright. And finally have security. Abibi Fahodie, right? So again, this is a little bit American focused. The idea of boycotting to depreciate and buy our neighborhoods. Again, you'd have to organize quite a bit. You'd have to organize quite a bit for somebody else to not buy off your neighborhood. You know what I mean? Like, essentially, you could boycott an area, and then it depreciates, and then somebody else buys it off. And that would be gentrification. So let's say, what's in your hand? Worldwide, there are less Europeans than Africans, yet the former is 80% of the permanent UN Security Council, the latter is 0%. European corporations, for example, Pfizer, test debilitating products on Africans. Some Europeans intentionally inject viruses, for example, HIV, into Africans and pollute African communities. For example, where does New York's pollution go? And now Europeans are intending to power Europe with a dam. I should have said, that's how you spell that, actually. Dam in the Congo at the heart of Africa. This lack of respect is too much. African people have at least 10 major cities in the U.S., the richest continent, Caribbean islands, and the most dispersed diaspora. In our brown hands is abundant wealth that we can coordinate. So there are less Africans than Europeans. So yeah, 80% of the UN Council. Now, this is actually pretty interesting. I just heard a podcast or a newscast on the UN Security Council, and how this UN Security Council pretty much runs the whole UN, and the idea is like, why would Africans even participate in the UN? So that was like a weird concern in the beginning. Nonetheless, because essentially, if you're in the UN, you're beholden to the UN's protocol, or you're beholden to the UN's message in a sense, and it's only 5 nations, 4 of which are European, which decide everything. So it's just kind of like, why would you even be a part of it? Although obviously there's good reason to be a part of it. I mean, good in the sense of, trade. Like you might not be able to trade, you might not be able to do this, you might not be able to do that, you might not be able to travel waters without being harassed by other nations. If you're not a strong nation, it might behoove you to not be a part of it. But we'll see. European corporations test debilitating products on Africans. So again, like I said, more things change, more things stay the same. What we've done to these European corporations seems to be nothing. In the 10 years that passed, nothing. And I'm speaking for myself too. Like, I haven't done anything about these European corporations. Haven't done anything about Europeans injecting viruses into Africans or the pollution of African communities. Shortly after this, obviously, I think it was shortly after, you'll have what is known as, it might have even been before, but you might have what was known as the lead poisoning scandal, or whatever you want to call it, right? And the only thing that I could say is that Europeans do not build this dam. They did not build a dam in thing. Now, let's say we have these major cities, Caribbean islands, most dispersed diaspora, the richest continent. Yeah, we have wealth, but we have to coordinate it, and we're not working towards that. So this is probably one of the things that will continue to be one of our grievances and concerns. And so this is actually a good thing to emphasize. It's actually a good thing to emphasize, but what we have to do is we have to really think about how we're going to radicalize our people towards a higher consciousness. We really have to think about that. Alright, so let's see. Giving intraracial respect. So Africa is beautiful. So that's respect between ourselves as a race. So the ethical code. So we have a mistrust of one another, a deep psychological scar of slavery, liberalism, and individualism. Laws like meritorious manumission rewarded our traders in ongoing and standard practice. We lost a philosophy to dismiss this treachery, ABS family, right? So of course I'm promoting, this organization, right? The Africans' ice is coldest. Europeans watch us. According to Selig Center for Economic Growth, in the U.S., we spent more than others on electricity, phone services, children's clothing, and footwear, and highly on groceries, housing, natural gas, women's clothing, and gasoline. Not surprisingly, none of these benefit Africans. Internationally, we have the resources, skills, and capital. We need to network internationally to improve our net worth internationally. Network. So, again, I'm going to say for myself, I haven't really been doing the amount of networking that really is required. But it is something that we should seriously consider as an African people, So that would be one of the grievances I would say carries on, even though, I can't say I've personally done that much for it. So if it takes a village, make a village. We need to give up our tribalism. Islands, boroughs, and neighborhoods are not important. We are Africans. And it's interesting that when I talk about tribalism, I'm talking about, I guess islands, boroughs, and neighborhoods, right? I'm talking about nationalism. Well, not nationalism, but like cityism and all that stuff. We are Africans. Remember, divide and conquer. We can do for self once we know ourselves. The continent has farmers. From them we should eat. The continent has currencies. From there we should purchase. In order to educate, build, and work for ourselves, and we must have a forum. ABS can be that forum. If there's no struggle, there's no progress. And that's Frederick Douglass. So, and of course I have a book for sale. That's why. Yeah. So we were just talking. All right. So that's it, though. That's really the whole podcast. That's the grievances from 2011. We're looking forward to 2021. I think that we should get together, and I think we should get together. I'm gonna probably host a conference. So if you're interested in coming to this conference, just send me a message any way you can, and we can and you can participate. I'm thinking maybe we could have at least 10 people participating in an open forum, and we try to settle the question once and for all of what needs to be done. But until then, we'll see. Right here, Futures CPED. Futures CPED. All right, well, organizing is too much work when you are at the bottom of everyone. I'm going to get an AR-15, a couple pipe bombs, and travel down the path of chaos in Hotep. Yeah, that's suicide. One thing that Assata Shakur said, oh no, not Assata Shakur, Tupac Shakur's mother, Afina Shakur, I guess, she told him, whatever you do, make sure you survive, right? Make sure you live, right? And obviously you're not going to live forever, but, you don't want to throw away your life. And by throw away your life, I mean, what's the end result of AR-15 and a couple of pipe bombs? What's that going to do? Sure, you can off a few white folk, but the system's going to remain, and you're just going to be dead, or you could survive. Well, actually, I don't see how you survive. How would you survive? How are you escaping? What's your escape plan? I mean, obviously, don't tell me, but even so, it's just unrealistic to think that white people will not, like any nation that you're in, wouldn't have mechanisms against you for essentially what would amount to terrorism in their eyes and in the eyes of most people. You don't what you want to do is you want to be about creating something. We're African people. We're about creation, and so that's really what it comes down to. What do you want to create? And that's what organizing is. Organizing is creating with other people, in a sense. I think it was the Blameless Code, where he says, be a part of a brotherhood, sisterhood, or group, for we accomplish more together than alone. You accomplish more with others than you do alone, and that's really it's really the sum total of it. So you want to make sure that at least, if nothing else, that you survive. You at least try to survive, and don't throw away your life for something that would mean nothing in the grand scheme of things. If you like our people, we spent hundreds of thousands of years to be free. So let's try to be free in our lives and not just sacrifice ourselves for what would be a cool news story. All right. Anyway, so if there's no other questions or comments, I think we should. I think it'd be interesting to have more people in the conference, and then we'll go from there. But otherwise, thank you so much for listening, and of course, Shem Hotep.